I locked my CEO out of her own system. Not because I wanted revenge, at least that's what I told myself at first. But after the way she treated me, after the way she humiliated me publicly, fired me privately, and tried to claim my work as her own, revenge felt like justice wearing a sharper suit. Her name was Valerie Hart, a woman who ran the company like a dictator in designer heels. I was her lead systems architect, the one who built the entire cybersecurity infrastructure from the ground up, the one who put in the long nights, the emergency weekends, the just one more patch, all-nighters. But the day she announced our new software suite to the board, she never mentioned my name. Not once. She used my design diagrams, my demo, even repeated the same jokes I wrote into the script. Then she fired me that same afternoon for being redundant. That was her mistake. She didn't know that redundancy was something I never coded into the system. I left quietly. No scenes. No dramatic exits. She thought I was too weak, too stunned to fight back. But all I carried with me was a tiny flash drive, my insurance policy. Inside it was a master failsafe key. Not to destroy anything, not to steal anything, but to simply lock a single door. The one door she needed more than anything, her admin access. 3 weeks after I left, the system performed its routine update, the one I used to supervise, the one I programmed to require that master key. Without me, the update executed its final command. Lockout, complete, unconditional, unoverreadable. Suddenly, the Queen lost her crown. Their entire infrastructure froze. Logins crashed. Permissions failed. Customer-facing tools were stuck in safe mode. Millions of dollars of operations halted in a single night. And the only person who could reverse it was the one she had called redundant. Me. I didn't gloat. I didn't brag. I didn't even respond when they first contacted me. Dozens of emails, then calls, then messages from old coworkers, then a lawyer, then her. Finally, after a month and a half, they stopped asking and began begging. Valerie herself showed up at my apartment building. She didn't have her heels this time. Her makeup was streaked. Her voice was hoarse. She asked me, no, pleaded with me, to come back. Said she was wrong. Said she needed me. Said the whole company depended on me. Of course it did. It always had. 3 months after firing me, they rehired me with triple the salary, full creative control, and a contract stating that no one, not even she, could override my authority on system design again. But before I accepted, I leaned in close and asked her one question. Do you remember calling me redundant? She swallowed hard. I do. Good, I said. Then you'll remember what happens when you underestimate the person who built the walls around your empire. I unlocked the system later that day, but I never unlocked that part of myself again. Because sometimes revenge isn't loud or violent. Sometimes it's silent, digital, and executed with a single line of code by the one person they thought they could throw away. The CEO steals the protagonist's work, publicly takes credit, and then fires him as redundant. This moment wasn't just a simple act of betrayal. It was the unraveling of years of dedication, trust, and silent sacrifices he made for a company he believed in. For nearly 5 years, he had been the backbone of the organization's digital infrastructure, the invisible guardian who protected the company from cyber threats, downtime crises, and system meltdowns that could have cost millions. He was the one answering emergency calls at 3 a.m., the one skipping weekends, holidays, and vacations because the system can't wait. He was the quiet problem solver, the one who never demanded praise, never fought for the spotlight, and never tried to claim more than he earned. But apparently, being the foundation of the company wasn't enough to stop someone like Valerie Hart from pushing him aside the moment she saw a chance to shine. It started with small signs, little omissions during meetings where she would casually use ideas he had presented the week before, claiming them as innovative insights she had been exploring. He didn't confront her. He assumed she simply forgot to credit him. When she stopped including him in creative briefings, he brushed it off as a scheduling oversight. When she began asking for copies of his prototypes for review, he handed them over without hesitation, trusting she was simply doing her job. He didn't realize that every document, every line of code, every strategic diagram she collected was being added to a secret portfolio she was assembling, one she would eventually use to reshape her image as the brilliant architect behind the company's next big leap. The day of the board presentation arrived like any other. He had prepared the system demo, refined the code, double-checked stability protocols, and polished the user interface. The project was his life's work, an adaptive cybersecurity suit designed to evolve with threats in real time. He had imagined being invited to present it, maybe even shake a few hands, maybe hear the board commend the years he poured into it. He sat quietly at the back of the conference room, not expecting applause, but hoping for acknowledgement. Then Valerie walked in, holding his demo tablet, using his script, standing tall as she spoke about the vision she nurtured, the architecture she designed, the system she personally oversaw from concept to creation. Each sentence was a leaf slipped between his ribs. Each slide she presented was one he had stayed up all night perfecting. The board members were impressed, praising her innovation and leadership. She smiled graciously, accepting compliments for work she had barely understood. And through it all, she never once looked at him. Not even a glance, not even a nod to the person who had built every piece of the empire she now claimed as her triumph. After the meeting, he tried to congratulate her, still hoping for some sign that she appreciated his contribution, even if she couldn't say it publicly. But instead of gratitude, she handed him a sealed envelope and said, "We need to talk." She led him to her glass-walled office, the one he had spent countless nights looking at from his cubicle, and gently, almost lovingly, told him he was being terminated. She called him redundant, claiming the company needed fresh leadership. Now that the new system was ready, she spoke as if she were doing him a favor, as if removing him from the very thing he created was an act of mercy. He sat silently, feeling numbness freeze every part of him. Redundant. That word echoed louder than the humiliating presentation. Redundant after he had built the system brick by digital brick. Redundant after he had sacrificed his personal life, his sleep, his health. Redundant after she had stolen the very work that made him valuable. He didn't argue. He didn't shout. He didn't defend himself. He simply watched her fold her hands, waiting for him to sign the paperwork, her expression soft and victorious, as though she believed she had neatly erased him from the company's history. But what she didn't know, what she could never have known, was that she hadn't erased him. She had only unleashed a version of him she would soon regret crossing. Because while she believed she was firing a replaceable employee, she was actually discarding the only person who understood the system well enough to keep it alive. And while she believed she had taken everything from him, she had unknowingly left him with the one thing that mattered most: the ability to take back what she stole, not with anger or violence, but with a silent, calculated line of code that would remind her exactly who had built the throne she tried to rule from. Expend 2 key point in 800 words without any heading. The protagonist secretly keeps a master failsafe key to the company's entire system. Most people would have left their job with nothing more than memories, bitter or otherwise, but he walked out with something far more powerful: a single flash drive containing a piece of code so small and unassuming that no one would ever guess its true strength. It wasn't a virus. It wasn't malware. It wasn't even harmful. It was simply a lock only he knew existed. One he built into the heart of the system long before Valerie decided he was redundant. When he created the cybersecurity framework, he understood one truth: any system, no matter how advanced, needed a final failsafe, a master override, something that could shut everything down in case of catastrophic breach or internal sabotage. He proposed the idea in meetings, but executives never cared about worst-case scenarios until they actually happened. So he designed a master key quietly, just in case. Not to control the company, not to wield power, but because he was a perfectionist who believed no system should exist without a final checkpoint. And since no one else took the idea seriously, he implemented it himself, burying it deep within layers of encrypted logic and disguised as part of the system's routine maintenance cycle. It wasn't malicious, it was protection. A final guardian, one that only he knew how to activate or deactivate. Typically, a failsafe should have been documented, monitored, and approved by board members, but in the chaos of rushed deadlines and Valerie's constant demands, no one bothered to read the deeper architecture of the code. They trusted him blindly until the moment they fired him. When he packed up his belongings, he didn't take confidential files or sensitive data. He took something entirely personal: the master key that validated the failsafe, a small, matte, black flash drive with no labels, no markings, nothing to distinguish it from any other. He kept it because it was his creation, his fingerprint on the company's system, a part of himself he wasn't willing to leave behind, after they discarded him. He didn't think he would ever use it. In fact, during the first weeks after being fired, he almost forgot it existed. He spent time recovering, sleeping like a normal human being for the first time in years, and trying to convince himself that life would move forward. He applied for new jobs, explored freelancing, even considered moving to another city. The flash drive sat untouched in a drawer collecting dust, seemingly powerless. But the failsafe didn't stay silent. It had a schedule. A system update set months earlier. One Valerie had insisted be automated so she wouldn't have to waste time reviewing boring backend stuff. That update was designed to run with full admin permissions, and to do so, it needed the master key's validation. Without that key, the system didn't break or delete anything. It simply locked itself, slipping into a secure mode where not even the highest level credentials could override it. Only the failsafe key, his key, could lift the lock. And so, the day he was fired, the clock started ticking. The system continued running as usual, unaware that the person who held the only means of unlocking the next major update was no longer part of the company. Valerie and her team didn't realize the impending problem. Why would they? In their minds, the system was perfect, stable theirs. The man who built it was gone, erased, forgotten. But the code remembered. It knew exactly who it answered to. As weeks passed, he occasionally thought about the company, not with bitterness, but with a distant curiosity. He wondered how they were functioning without him, whether Valerie was still boasting about her innovations, whether the team was overworked trying to fix bugs only he could solve. But he didn't feel the urge to intervene. He had no reason to. They made their decision. They burned their bridge. The night before the scheduled update, he slept peacefully, unaware that the next morning would plunge the company into chaos. Meanwhile, thousands of miles of digital networks were preparing to execute their automated processes. Servers queued their instructions, firewalls refreshed, protocols aligned for recalibration. Then, like a clock striking midnight, the update triggered. First, the admin access blinked out. Then the control panels froze. Then every authenticated user was logged out. Then every attempt to log back in failed. The system wasn't damaged. It was simply waiting. Waiting for the master key. Waiting for the only person who held the power to wake it up. When the company realized something was wrong, they scrambled. IT teams tore through lines of code. Engineers tried to reverse engineer permissions. Valerie screamed at technicians, demanding answers. But no one could find the failure point. No one understood the lock. No one even suspected that the redundant man they fired was the only one capable of undoing it. As panic spread through departments, the protagonist sat in his apartment, completely unaware of the tempest he had unintentionally unleashed. That tiny flash drive, silent in his drawer, had become the most important object in the company's existence, and he wouldn't learn any of this until they came knocking. After he leaves, the scheduled system update triggers and locks the CEO out of her own network. The twist was that he didn't cause it manually. It happened all on its own, just as the system was designed to. The failsafe he had built wasn't some explosive trap waiting to destroy everything. It was simply a guardian that demanded authentication. For years, the system had followed a perfectly timed schedule of security refreshes, deep scans, and kernel-level recalibrations. These updates were the backbone of keeping the company protected. Normally, the master key validated the most important stage of the process, the part that rewrote and re-secured top-level permissions. Without the key, the system did exactly what he engineered it to do: protect itself by locking down every admin privilege until the proper authentication was provided. The night the update triggered, no one in the company even knew it was happening. They trusted automation, trusted him, trusted the stable environment he had given them. Even after firing him, they assumed the system would keep functioning as if he were still there, silently maintaining the digital heartbeat of the entire corporation. They didn't realize that firing the architect without understanding the structure meant they were tampering with a machine none of them knew how to operate. At precisely 2:00 a.m., the entire network began transitioning into update mode. All admin accounts, CEO, directors, senior cybersecurity staff were temporarily suspended as usual. This was designed to prevent unauthorized interruption. The system scanned for the master key. With no key present, it reached the checkpoint where it normally received a handshake confirmation from the failsafe. Without that handshake, the system followed its fallback protocol. It locked everything. At first, the effects seemed small. A few automated tasks failed to launch. Scheduled reports didn't send. Overnight processing paused. But then, as employees logged in at the start of the workday, chaos unfolded like a slow motion avalanche. Managers couldn't access their dashboards. HR systems were unresponsive. Finance tools froze mid-load. Customer service portals refused all logins. By 9:00 a.m., panic had grown loud enough to shake the upper floors. Valerie, who had strutted confidently into the office, expecting another day of claiming credit for work she barely understood, was met by frantic staff members.
"We can't access anything! We're locked out! The whole system is down!"
She stormed into the IT command center, heels clicking like gunshots. A dozen engineers were already there, screens glowing with red errors. No one met her eye. The lead technician finally muttered, "Ma'am, it's the core authorization layer. It's locked." "Then unlock it," she snapped. "We can't." Her eyes narrowed. "What do you mean you can't?" He hesitated, swallowing hard. "This isn't a normal crash. It's a fail-safe lockdown. Something triggered a deep security protocol. The system thinks it's protecting itself." Protecting itself from her. Valerie refused to believe it. She tried her credentials, then her emergency credentials, then the executive override. Nothing worked. Every attempt was met with the same cold message as CCS's didn't need. Mastar validadio and required. For the first time since she took over the company, fear crept into her voice. Who is master validation? The room fell silent. Everyone knew the answer. Everyone looked at each other. No one wanted to say it. Finally, a junior engineer whispered, almost apologetically, "He did." Valerie's face drained of color. "No," she hissed. "He's gone. I fired him."
"Yes,"
another technician said quietly, and he took his master key with him. She tried to maintain control, tried to bark new orders, tried to pretend she still had power.
"Bypass it, rewrite the protocols, break the encryption."
But they couldn't. He had designed it too well. The system didn't just lock them out. It protected itself from anyone who wasn't him. Hours turned into days. Productivity crashed. Clients complained. Backup environments flickered but offered no solution, because the master permissions governed everything, including backups. Valerie called emergency meetings, hired outside specialists, and poured money into consultants who all said the same thing after trying and failing. "We can't fix what we don't understand." And none of them understood the architecture like he did. Over the next 6 weeks, the company bled money. Projects stalled. Contracts were put on hold. Departments functioned with pen and paper like it was the Stone Age. IT worked around the clock, but every road led to the same wall. The system wasn't broken, it was simply waiting for him. By the time 3 months had passed, desperation no longer looked like embarrassment. It looked like survival. Valerie, who once stood tall as a feared leader, now sat in her office late at night, exhausted, makeup smudged, hands trembling. She had been locked out, literally and symbolically, from the empire she claimed to have built, and deep down, she knew the irony too well. She fired the one person she needed most. She stole the work of the one person who could have saved her. She underestimated the one person she believed was replaceable. But the system never forgot him, and now neither could she, because the kingdom she ruled with arrogance had collapsed not from sabotage, but from the simple truth. Without its architect, a fortress becomes nothing but a locked, silent shell. The company collapses into chaos, logins fail, tools crash, and operations freeze. What began as a confusing inconvenience quickly spiraled into a full-scale corporate disaster, the kind that board members have nightmares about. On the first morning after the update lockout, employees assumed it was just another technical hiccup. Systems had occasional slowdowns before, and minor glitches weren't unusual. But within minutes, it became painfully clear this wasn't a routine malfunction. Nothing worked. Literally nothing. The receptionist couldn't sign into her scheduling panel. The finance department couldn't open payroll systems. The legal team couldn't access document archives. Even the cafeteria payment terminals failed, leaving employees trading cash for coffee like they were in some improvised marketplace. Every corner of the company felt the impact instantly. Tools that were essential for day-to-day work weren't just lagging, they were completely dead. Whenever someone attempted to log in, their screens flashed the same chilling message, a CCSS DNED. It wasn't long before frustration boiled into panic. Managers shouted across floors, IT support lines exploded with complaints, and employees who relied heavily on digital tools just sat helplessly at their desks, staring at blank screens. People wandered around the office looking for anyone who knew what was happening. And the worst part, no one did. The IT department, normally hidden in a quiet corner of the building, suddenly became the beating heart of the crisis. Dozens of engineers and technicians crowded around servers, frantically typing commands, running diagnostics, and rebooting systems in desperate cycles. But every attempt to restore access only triggered deeper levels of the lockdown. The security architecture was airtight, designed by a man they had discarded without a second thought. The system refused every command that didn't originate from the missing master key. Even systems that weren't directly connected began to collapse. Automated customer support tools froze, leaving customers unable to get answers. The sales team found themselves unable to process new deals. High-level clients tried to log into their portals and found themselves locked out, prompting angry calls and urgent escalation. What had started as a missing validation had transformed into a catastrophic chokehold on every part of the business. The board demanded explanations. Valerie tried to provide them, hiding her rising fear behind a mask of confidence. But even she couldn't deny the truth. The company was paralyzed. The infrastructure she had taken credit for was revealing its true loyalty. It belonged to the one who built it. Meetings became war rooms. Every department sent updates consisting of nothing but disasters, missed deadlines, lost revenue, canceled partnerships, legal threats, and overflowing customer complaints. But the worst blow came from the finance division. Without access to financial tracking, the company couldn't properly issue invoices or record transactions. This meant that while money should have been flowing in, they were unable to verify or bill anything properly. The losses grew into the millions before the end of the first week. By the second week, every employee was feeling the pressure. People whispered in hallways about job security, pointing fingers at IT, at management, at Valerie. Tempers flared. Stress skyrocketed. The company culture that Valerie had always bragged about, efficient, high-performing, elite, fell apart as people realized the truth. The company had always been balanced delicately on the shoulders of a man they had kicked out like he meant nothing. The outside world began to notice. Competitors circled like vultures, sensing weakness. News articles surfaced about the mysterious outage. Customers shared their frustrations on social media. Some accused the company of being hacked, others spread rumors of internal sabotage, and still others claimed it was the beginning of a complete corporate collapse. Their reputation, once polished and powerful, began to crack with every unanswered inquiry and every glitch that disrupted operations. Meanwhile, Valerie was unraveling. She held emergency meetings with outside cybersecurity firms, hoping that anyone, could break through his failsafe. Teams of experts were flown in, each one boasting impressive credentials, but they all hit the same impenetrable wall. The system was designed in a way only its creator could fully understand. Every time they thought they had found a loophole, the system adjusted, rerouted, or shut down secondary access. It wasn't sentient, but it was smart, and it was loyal to its architect, following every rule he had written, every safeguard he had embedded. The board's confidence in Valerie crumbled. They demanded answers she didn't have. Yet she refused to admit the truth, that the man she fired was the only one capable of restoring the company's heartbeat. But denial couldn't last forever. The evidence was undeniable. She had fired the wrong person. She had underestimated the wrong person. She had stolen from the wrong person. By the end of the second month, the company's shares plummeted, contracts dissolved, and partnerships were suspended. They lost clients they had worked years to secure. Productivity hit record lows. Even day-to-day operations became a nightmare as workers reverted to manual processes that were barely functional in a digitally dependent environment. Chaos became their daily routine. Every morning began with scrambling and ended with failure. The company wasn't just frozen, it was suffocating. And through all of this, the failsafe remained untouched, waiting patiently. Waiting for the only person alive who had the authority to wake the system. The man they had thrown away. The man they had dismissed as redundant. The man who held the future of their crumbling empire on a dusty flash drive, sitting quietly in his drawer. He negotiates triple salary, full authority, and finally unlocks the system, achieving the perfect, silent corporate revenge. But the truth behind that negotiation wasn't just about money or power. It was about balance, dignity, and reclaiming every ounce of respect they had tried to strip from him. When Valerie finally contacted him, her voice trembling, her words strained with desperation, he didn't answer right away. He let the calls go to voicemail. He let the emails pile up. He let the corporate panic swell to its breaking point. Not because he wanted to make them suffer, but because he had suffered first, quietly and alone, while they celebrated a future they built on the foundation of his stolen work. The first time Valerie showed up at his apartment, she stood outside like a shadow from his past, nothing like the polished, commanding CEO who had fired him with a smile weeks earlier. She looked exhausted, defeated, and, for the first time human, she apologized. That alone was shocking. Valerie Hart didn't apologize to anyone. She explained the situation in vague, softened terms, too prideful to admit the magnitude of her failure. He listened, arms crossed, leaning against his doorway, not offering her so much as a seat. "Please," she finally said, voice cracking, "we need you back." He didn't respond. He didn't need to. The silence between them said everything. She returned again a few days later, and again, each time, a little less put together, a little more humbled. Eventually, it wasn't just her. Board members started reaching out. The same men who had praised her for her innovation now spoke to him with gentle voices, hoping polite desperation would sway him. They offered him a consulting position, then a contractor role, then a temporary rehiring. He declined every offer without hesitation. None of them understood what they were asking. They didn't want him. They wanted the system he had built. They wanted his mind, not his presence. They wanted the solution, not the man who created it. It took 3 full months before they realized the only way to get him back was on his terms. They arranged a formal meeting at a neutral venue, a quiet, upscale cafe. He arrived intentionally late. Valerie and 2 board members were already seated, their expressions a mix of hope and dread. The moment he walked in, they stood up instinctively, as though they were greeting royalty. And in a way, they were. He was the only one who held the key to their entire kingdom. Negotiations began stiffly. Valerie attempted to reclaim some semblance of authority, speaking in her usual corporate tone. But it wasn't long before desperation smothered her confidence. She offered him his old position back. He declined. She offered a raise. He declined. She offered expanded responsibilities. He declined again. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't gloat. He didn't need to. His calm refusal alone forced them to confront their failures. Finally, one of the board members exhaled harshly. "What do you want?" "Authority," he replied simply. They blinked, confused. "Authority over what?" "Everything related to the system. My system." He paused, watching their expressions shift. "You don't get to alter it. You don't get to override me. You don't get to question my decisions. I want full creative and administrative control." Valerie opened her mouth to protest, but he cut her off with a single, cold sentence. "Without me, your company dies." The board members looked at each other, and in that silent exchange of fear and financial panic, the decision was made. They agreed, but he wasn't finished. "I also want triple my previous salary, and I want a clause in the contract that protects my position. You can't fire me without a unanimous board vote and tangible evidence of misconduct." He leaned back in his chair. "That clause applies to you too, Valerie." Her jaw tightened, but she didn't argue. She couldn't. She needed him more than her pride. The contract was drafted within 48 hours. Lawyers combed through every word, but the terms remained untouched. He signed it calmly, like someone signing for a package delivery, not for complete control of a company's digital lifeline. The day he returned to the office, employees stared as if witnessing a ghost. Valerie avoided his eyes. The board members greeted him with forced smiles. He ignored all of them. He went straight to the server room, plugged in the flash drive, entered a code only he knew, and the system woke up like a sleeping giant finally receiving permission to breathe again. Logins restored. Tools activated. Operations resumed. The entire company surged back to life within minutes. People celebrated, cheering with relief. Valerie closed her office door and cried quietly, knowing she owed her entire career to the man she once called redundant. As for him, he didn't revel in their collapse or their fear. His revenge wasn't loud, it was simple, dignified, and absolute. He didn't set out to destroy their world. He merely let them experience life without the person they had taken for granted. And in the end, he didn't just get justice. He got respect. He got power. He got the final say. But most importantly, he got the last word, without ever having to speak it.